It is 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. A smiling Princess of Wales thanks the public for their support as the first official image is released since her operation. She was last on royal duty more than 2 months ago, but there are questions tonight as international news agencies withdraw the photograph, with one saying it appears to have been manipulated. Also ahead, the aid delayed for Gaza on the eve of Ramadan as President Biden warns Israel of a red line over a renewed assault. Refining the definition of extremism in the UK today and the groups that fear the government could now label them. The family's fears more than 50 years on that police could abandon an attempt to find the body of murdered Muriel McKay.
And I'm here on the Vanity Fair red carpet as we wait to find out whether filmmaker Christopher Nolan will win his first ever Oscar.
And we will take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. Now, for weeks, Kensington Palace has stuck to the most unspecific of updates on the health of the Princess of Wales. Kate was making good progress or recovering and continues to do well. Now, in the absence of pictures of the Princess, speculation, especially online or outside of the UK, has been intense. Today, the first official photograph of the Princess this year was released in a social media update in which she thanked the public for their kind wishes and support. But tonight, there are questions over the image, with leading international news agencies withdrawing it from use, with one, the Associated Press, saying it appears to be manipulated. More on that in a moment, but first, our royal correspondent Laura Bundock has our top story.
Kate normally takes the family photos, but this shot is the work of William, showing his wife looking well and relaxed. It is an image released to reassure. We haven't seen the Princess of Wales officially since Christmas Day. She's recovering in private after abdominal surgery. Her office advised there'd be no running commentary, but couldn't control the internet conspiracies and international media interest.
Rumours surrounding the Princess of Wales' health still swirl.
È una buona notizia, no? Rivedere Kate Middleton.
Kate Middleton, la princesa de Gales, reapareció en público.
There's people freaking out all over the place, starting conspiracy theories.
The balance blurred between an interested public and what is in the public interest.
Even on Celebrity Big Brother, it was asked by Ekin-Su. And I think that just sort of tells everybody that she is healthy and she's okay.
She's not ready for that. And I think she needs to be left alone.
I think if something wasn't published today on Mother's Day, then we'd probably be saying, oh, maybe something's up that way.
The Prince of Wales has been flying solo, and we've been told not to expect Kate on engagements until around Easter. But last week, the MOD messed up and announced her attendance at Trooping the Colour. That came a day after she was photographed by paparazzi being driven by her mother.
I don't think the palace should have been put in a position where they felt that they really had to put out information that Catherine didn't want put out. Yes, she's a public figure, but yes, we all have a right to privacy about our medical details and conditions. And I just think we need to stop and let it be, and let the internet go wild and have a frenzy if it must do.
The Prime Minister, Your Majesty.
The King hasn't faced the same scrutiny. He's not out in public while undergoing cancer treatment, but keen to be seen carrying on with his constitutional work.
There is, of course, a distinction between the King and Kate. He is head of state, head of the nation. Her role is very different. But she remains one of the most popular royals, which is why the absence of information about her has been filled with so much disinformation.
The Princess personally thanked people for their continuing support. The question now whether a single photo can silence the speculation.
Well, I'm pleased to say that Laura is here with me now. Now, Laura, of course, there is the photograph. What do we understand is happening by these photo agencies, these news agencies with it?
This is all really strange and, happening as we speak. But let me explain what we do know. We have some respected international news agencies deciding to kill this photo. In other words, they are pulling it from their distribution websites because they believe it has been changed, altered, photoshopped, call it what you like. They don't believe this is the photo in its original form. Now, Associated Press is among those who've decided to kill this photo, to pull it. They saying at closer inspection, it appears that the source has manipulated the image. Now, remember, the source of this photo, we were told by Kensington Palace, was Prince William himself. He took this photo in Windsor last week. He is behind it. Now, we don't know what manipulation of the image actually means, so we don't know how much of this image isn't its original form. Is it a filter? Are there tweaks? We just simply don't know. What we do know is that Kensington Palace have declined to comment about this, and it just makes it all the more bizarre. And in terms of the speculation around this photo, it is only going to fuel the fires, I think, of those conspiracy theorists.
And of course, this photo was released for Mothering Sunday, of course, showing the family, but it was also there to try and dampen down some of those fires from the conspiracies. But with what's happened now, it's only going to inflame it.
Yeah, and look, certainly Kensington Palace were hoping that this one picture would paint 1,000 words, and we see Kate there. She looks healthy, she looks happy, she's surrounded by her children who seem to be laughing, having a good time there. The fact it was taken by her husband, by William, made it feel all the more personal, I think. They were hoping this would put to bed a lot of the, outrageous rumours that have been, finding themselves an audience online. But I think the fact that we've got these news agents saying we don't believe this is the original form of the photo, it's been manipulated, it is certainly gonna leave a lot of people asking even more questions about what's going on.
And they're saying on closer inspection, they're not going on the online speculation, they're going on the work that they have done as well. How do you said Kensington Palace has not responded yet. How will the Palace, do you think, respond to this?
They will be hoping this goes away and goes away quickly. Look, as the story evolves, we'll find out more. But I think, the bigger picture here is that Kate had always said, and the word was, that she'd had the abdominal surgery. We're going to tell you everything we want to tell you right at the start. So in the middle of January, we were told the operation had taken place. It was a success. There would be this recovery period of 2 to 3 months. We weren't expecting to see her on any public-facing engagements this side of Easter. But other than that, there wouldn't be a running commentary. But of course, what that meant was that the absence of, as I was saying in my report, the absence of any information coming forward meant there was a gap, and that gap was filled with all the rumours and the like. So this photo, I think, was released to just try and calm everything down and let the princess, and she has the right to privacy, obviously, continue her recovery. But I think it is just going to add fuel, as I say, flames to fuel the flames of all the theories flying around.
And some of the senior royals will be out tomorrow as well.
Yeah, so they're going to be under the spotlight even more. It's the Commonwealth Day service, which is a big set-piece event, takes place annually. It would normally be the King leading the family. Obviously, he's off work at the moment as well. He's recorded a message, which in itself will be significant. It's the first time we'll have seen him directly speaking in front of a camera. So there'll be a lot of kind of scrutiny of how he's looking, what he says as well. We'll see Prince William there, but it'll be Camilla leading the family, and another sign, really, of this new royal order we're now in.
Absolutely. OK, Laura, for now, thank you very much for that. Laura Abundant, our royal correspondent, and Kensington Palace, as we say, have declined to comment at this stage. Now, there was drama at Buckingham Palace in the early hours of the morning yesterday. Police arrested a man after a car crashed into the palace's gates. Now, this is the moment armed officers made that arrest. The man was detained on suspicion of criminal damage. He was taken to hospital and has been sectioned under the Mental Health Act. He has since been released on bail. No members of the royal family were in the palace at the time. Now, for a number of weeks, tomorrow had appeared a potential turning point, for good or ill, in the Israel-Hamas war. The beginning of Ramadan, both a target date for ceasefire and a potential starting date for a further offensive in Gaza. Tonight, instead, the focus is on the efforts to get aid into Gaza by land, air and now sea. An aid ship is waiting to leave Larnaca in Cyprus to travel the 210 nautical miles to a port in the north of the Gazan enclave. Now, most of Gaza's population is now in the south, where more than 1.5 million displaced people have been sheltering in Rafah. President Biden today said an Israeli assault there was an American red line. Our Middle East correspondent Asda Bunkel reports now from Larnaca.
The final preparations to get the ship ready to sail for Gaza were taking place today. Hundreds of tons have been loaded on board: rice, flour and protein. If this first aid mission goes well, then Larnaca port could become an aid hub for ships over the coming weeks, naval and civilian. World Central Kitchen, the US humanitarian organisation that is providing the aid, told us that the more food that gets in, the better the security on the ground in Gaza will become.
We know that this can't be the only ship, right? We need to have second ship lined up, third ship lined up, which we do. The more food we can get into there, into Gaza, the more safe, the more secure it is, the more orderly it is. But until we see more flow, it will continue to be a bit of a security concern.
Separately, an American military ship, the USS Frank Besson, has now left Virginia on the US East Coast. It will take a few weeks to reach the region, and American military officials think that their floating pier in Gaza could be up and running in about 60 days' time. This will be a multi-organisational effort, with other militaries, possibly the British, also involved. The idea for a maritime corridor starting in Cyprus was made towards the end of last year, and so they've had months to prepare, and that's included putting in high-tech scanners so the Israelis can check all the aid that is being loaded onto ships. But whilst the starting point here is now ready, where the ships will dock in Gaza, well, that is far from certain and fraught with a lot of technical difficulty. As the humanitarian crisis worsens inside Gaza, and with hopes of a ceasefire before Ramadan surely all but gone now, President Biden is becoming increasingly frank with his Israeli allies, and his irritation with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is no longer kept private.
He must pay more attention to the innocent lives being lost as a consequence of the actions taken. He's hurting, in my view, he's hurting Israel more than helping Israel by making the rest of the world, it's contrary to what Israel stands for. And I think it's a big mistake. So I want to see a ceasefire.
Tonight, the ship remains in Larnaca port, waiting for a weather window and the security clearance before it can leave. It won't go, we're told, before tomorrow. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Larnaca, Cyprus.
Well, our international affairs editor Dominic Waghorn is in Jerusalem for us tonight. And Dom, that ship is delayed. There's no sign of a ceasefire, and Ramadan is about to begin. Is this conflict about to take another turn?
Yeah, there's not much good news, is there? And I think we've had an extraordinary interview with the American president and tonight an extraordinary response from the Israeli leader. It's hard to imagine the Israelis having a stauncher ally in the White House. Unlike Presidents Reagan and both Bushes, Joe Biden has not let a single resolution critical of Israel go to the UN. He's not used any a threat of financial or military aid being suspended to put pressure on Israel. And yes, this extraordinary moment when he said that he believes Netanyahu is doing more harm than good for Israel and making a big mistake in Gaza, warning him not to go into Rafah, and yet tonight Benjamin Netanyahu, asked about that, said we will go there. So up front, defiance from the Israeli Prime Minister. I think the question now is Joe Biden going to find the diplomatic pressure to put meaningful reinforcement behind his rhetoric to match where his words are, and is he going to be able to force Netanyahu to toe the line in terms of not going to Rafah, but also doing more to open up land crossings, which all aid agencies say are vital to get enough aid into Gaza. The talk of a pier, of boats going and airdrops is helpful, but it's cosmetic, and it's going to be too late to prevent Gaza slipping into what David Cameron this week said could be potentially famine. So I think that's the question tonight. We've been talking to people across the West Bank and East Jerusalem here on the eve of Ramadan tonight. The mood is not one of explosive anger, it's one of despair, of depression, of heartbreak about what they're seeing in Gaza, and that's matched on the Israeli side about the plight of the hostages. Going now into this fifth month of a conflict here, there's just a sense of hopelessness about where this war goes next, with no end in sight.
OK, Dominic, for now in Jerusalem, thank you for that. Now, the government needs to redraw the line between what is legitimate and what is extremism, a minister told Sky News today. Mike Freer, who will stand down at the next election over his security fears, was speaking ahead of the release of a new definition of extremism expected in the coming days. Now, one of the groups which fears it could now be covered by it said it would be dangerous and could single out the Muslim community. Adele Robinson has this.
In unison, the sound of ancient Jewish instruments. marking a moment for hostages in a conflict thousands of miles away.
Bring them home! Bring them home!
And at the end of a week of tense exchanges in the UK around the Israel-Hamas war.
He has a sign that says Hamas are terrorists.
Off the back of London protests, questions now over Communities Secretary Michael Gove's plans to redefine the term extremism, making it less broad, more specific.
It's difficult because I'm sure the bulk of people demonstrating have genuine concerns for what's going on in Gaza, but there are a significant minority, a very vocal minority, who are taking control and are intimidatory. And so the Prime Minister is right that some of those demonstrations have got out of hand, and Michael Gove was right. We need to have a long, hard look at where the line is drawn between freedom of speech and when it becomes intimidation.
London's also said to have become a no-go zone for Jews during protests. Some agree, some don't, but actress Dame Maureen Lipman says she feels unsafe in general.
I don't want to be frightened when I walk to work, and I want to live in peace alongside peace-loving people, and more moderate people must speak up.
Do you feel frightened walking to work?
I felt frightened for a long time.
Mr Gove's new definition of extremism could see certain groups added to a banned list.
And this is where the language is crucial. It matters because it defines the parameters of what's classed as extremism. Some groups are concerned it will brand legitimate organisations and people as extremists.
Among them, according to a leaked document, could be the Muslim Council of Britain.
I think it's really dangerous for mainstream Muslim organisations like the Muslim Council of Britain to be considered to be extreme in any form. All of our actions over the last decade or longer have all been things that have been supporting our democracy. Singling out Muslim communities, saying for some reason the Muslim Council of Britain has anything to do with extremism is totally unrealistic and unjustifiable. And we are really worried.
More details will be revealed this week, and as ever, it will be a balance between freedom of speech and protecting the public. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
Well, if you scan the QR code you can see on screen right now, you can listen to the latest edition of Politics at Jack and Sam's. This week, our Deputy Political Editor Sam Coates and Politico's UK Editor Jack Blanchard discussed the government's plan to change the definition of extremism. You can subscribe to it wherever you find your podcasts. Now, the family of a woman murdered more than 50 years ago have told Sky News that they fear the police may be about to abandon plans to search for her body. Muriel McKay's killer was questioned by detectives from the UK in Trinidad just last week. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt has more.
It's Gatwick Airport, 9 a.m. This was the moment a senior detective was confronted by Muriel McKay's angry grandson, Mark Dyer. The officer had just landed from the Caribbean after an interview with Muriel's killer. The family say the detective told them it hadn't gone well. Mr. Dyer and his mother Diane had hoped the killer would tell police what he'd already told them, the precise location where he buried Muriel's body 55 years ago. But he didn't do that.
We are being played with, our emotions are being played with. It's not a game, and my mother's emotions and health are being played with, and this has got to stop. Either my grandmother is where Nizam says he is, or she's not. It's simple.
Muriel McKay was kidnapped for ransom in 1969. Her body was never found. It was 6 weeks ago the family flew to Trinidad to meet Muriel's killer. It was an extraordinary meeting.
Hello, it's me. I came all this way to see you.
Thank you, God bless you.
Hussein told the family Muriel had died of a heart attack. He buried her on the Hertfordshire farm where he and his brother held her ransom. On old photographs, Hussein pointed to the burial site. But after 3 days of interviews at Couva police station, the family say police told them Hussein hadn't provided a location with any consistency.
It's taken us nearly 3 years to get this guy to really be open and friendly with us. And that's not what we ever set out to achieve. We only wanted information, but we've had to work very hard psychologically on his character to gain his confidence. and they walked in and snuffed it.
Nizam Hussain was 22 at the time of Muriel's kidnap and murder. With his brother Arthur, he was jailed for life after one of the first murder trials without a body. Police searched the farm 2 years ago but found nothing. The family fear their hopes of a new dig are fading. Martin Brunt, Sky News.
Now, 2 people have been arrested by police investigating a chain of funeral directors in Hull. A 46-year-old man and a 23-year-old woman are being held on suspicion of prevention of a lawful and decent burial and fraud. 34 deceased people have now been transferred to a mortuary in Hull for formal identification. President Volodymyr Zelensky has dismissed comments by Pope Francis in which the Pope seems to suggest Ukraine should have the courage to negotiate an end to the war with Russia. In an interview with a Swiss broadcaster, Pope Francis used the words, "the courage of the white flag," as he said Ukraine is facing defeat and should be open to peace talks. And an Australian shepherd dog has won Crufts. 3-year-old Viking from Solihull beat 24,000 dogs from all around the world to be crowned Best in Show. Now, 11 is the magic number when it comes to Oscar wins. The most recent film to receive that number of awards was the final Lord of the Rings film more than 20 years ago. Now, tonight, some believe Oppenheimer could go close or even surpass it. Let's bring in our arts and entertainment correspondent, Katie Spencer. All right, Katie, so you've got... Oh, my goodness gracious. Katie, take it away.
All right, well, that's Look, you fly over to Hollywood, and this just happens when you're walking down the road. You happen to bump into Dame Joan Collins. Dame Joan, you look absolutely stunning.
Thank you,
out for the viewing party tonight here at the Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
Look, we were just talking about who your favourites are this year. Who are you rooting for?
Well, I really do. I love Annette Bening and Jodie Foster in Naiad, and I love Coleman Domingo in that film that Rustin. I thought that was excellent, and I like to like films that not everybody likes. I mean, that not everybody will. I think that American Fiction is a really entertaining, fun movie.
A lot of the films this year, they're very long, Dame Joan. What do you make of the ones that go beyond 3 hours?
I don't watch them. I give it 2 hours, 2 hours and 10 minutes, and then I say, I gotta go to bed.
Have the directors got a bit flabby, would you say? Does someone need to kind of pull them into shape? Are you that woman, Dame Joan?
No, I'm not going to comment on that. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're looking gorgeous, and it's such an honour to talk to you. Have a brilliant evening. Thank you. Well, look, Dame Joan is just one of the stars who is out tonight. We're expecting a little later on some of the Oscar winners to be heading our way, but it's just been an absolutely terrific year in terms of extraordinary films that have been produced. Should we take a look at some of them?
Campaigning's over.
You talk too much.
Voting is closed.
You're welcome.
When it comes to this year's Oscars, can anything derail Christopher Nolan's cinematic juggernaut?
Well, remember this day.
With Oppenheimer's 13 nominations, this year's Academy Awards might seem pretty predictable. But if you're looking for areas that might just see some upsets, let's start with one category that could go either way. Best Actress.
So far, Emma Stone has taken home pretty much every award going for her role in Poor Things. For her castmates, she deserves to win.
What you keep doing that for?
Just right there, the greatest dancing partner you could have, literally.
But some are predicting votes could go Lily Gladstone's way.
Should that happen, the Killers of the Flower Moon actress would be the Oscars' first ever Native American winner.
You know, it hasn't always been that we've been excluded from the center of, filmic storytelling. It was in the wake of, in the United States, the Great Depression and World War II that the cowboy-driven Western rose.
A little more certain are this year's supporting categories.
So far, Davine Joy Randolph's depiction of a grieving mother in The Holdovers has been unbeatable.
I don't need you feeling sorry for me.
Although speaking to Sky News in the build-up, she couldn't go there.
And dare you sort of think ahead to the Oscars, or?
I dare not, I shan't not, and I won't.
While we get to see Ryan Gosling on stage singing inside there, it's not Barbie that Ken will be playing second fiddle to, but this man.
The Russians have a bomb.
Can Robert Downey Jr. complete his winning streak this award season for Oppenheimer? We'll find out soon. Certainly Cillian Murphy getting Best Actor feels almost locked in.
More importantly, will the ceremony deliver Christopher Nolan his first ever Oscar?
And I really feel very, very lucky and very honoured to be making work that hopefully does encourage somebody to, you know, hand over hard-earned money.
The great thing about this year's Oscars is that there are no real duds in the Best Picture shortlist, but the momentum is certainly with Nolan's hit biopic.
How about because this is the most important thing to ever happen in the history of the world?
If it takes home more than 11 Oscars, Oppenheimer will beat Titanic and Lord of the Rings to make history. Given its critical acclaim, it seems less a question of whether it wins, but really by how many.
Look, if Oppenheimer wins, yes, that would be brilliant because it's a British director, and we think that perhaps certainly Christopher Nolan's going to do all right, perhaps certainly when it comes to British Best Director. But look, if there's anything that could cause some upset, what if Poor Things won? That wouldn't be too bad for us as well, because we know it's co-produced by an Irish company. So as well, if we don't get the British director, come on, how about the film that's co-produced by Irish producers? Equally good.
It absolutely is. All right, Katie, thank you for that. And more from you next hour. Looking forward to seeing which legend you're standing with then.
No pressure.
None at all. Now, it was a significant day in the Premier League. Let's get the latest sports news now. Here's David.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
Now this signifies a corner, okay? I don't want this and I don't want that. I need the hand up here, okay? That is contested.
It's school on a Sunday, but nobody's complaining because the lesson is the laws of the game and the classroom is Villa Park. The FA wants to find 1,000 new black, Asian and mixed heritage referees from different communities around the country. It's part of the reflective and representative campaign.
We want to increase the pool of referees from these communities at a grassroots level with the hope that in the future that these individuals can then go through the refereeing progression pathway and then eventually referee within the Women's Super League and in the Premier League. Historically, maybe the interest wasn't there, but actually we haven't probably done enough to actually showcase what refereeing is about.
You're going to go there and blow the whistle and give a direct free kick.
A lot of challenges that people talked about, the themes were, referee courses were too expensive, and that's why we've employed a bursary scheme as part of this campaign.
You two go.
Going into grassroots football and going into it as a referee, with all the other challenges that I have, the other added challenge will be the discrimination angle.
You need to blow the whistle and put your hand like this. It's got to be like this on every single cone.
The achievements of Sam Allison, Rebecca Welsh and Sunny Singill have highlighted the importance of role models and mentors within refereeing, with new refs coming through having people to aspire to. The organisation BAMREF was set up to increase levels of representation in refereeing, and were in attendance on the day.
Straight arm out.
Well, I've never seen this before. It's absolutely amazing to be part of a room full of young black, Asian, mixed heritage, young people ready to start their refereeing journey.
Do you remember when you first stepped into a room ready to do a referee course?
I was the only female and I was the only black and Asian mixed heritage of that community.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's papers in our press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the broadcaster and author, Natasha Devon, and by the political journalist and broadcaster, Theo Ushby. Thanks both. And among the stories we'll be discussing is this, of course, on the front of the Metro showing the Princess of Wales after her recent surgery. The headline, "I'm Smiles Better." We'll also have more on the controversy tonight over the photo after international news agency withdrew it, claiming it had been manipulated. We'll be right back.
women seeing celebrities who they can recognise, they can identify with, talking about something that they are going through and may not have realised. I think it's really helped to bring the conversation to the fore. That said, I know what you're talking about, that there's been this dramatisation and that it's catastrophising, and I feel that there's got to be a balance somewhere. There's a lot of focus on all of the very extreme stuff that happens, and I think we need to be talking about the education, the positive things that women can do themselves before we go to every woman is going to have a terrible menopause. And I don't think that does women any favours, because people start to say, oh, menopausal woman, oh, you know, they're all in a box, they're all going through the same experience. I think there are an awful lot of other papers and a lot of other research that says that the psychological impact of menopause can be greater than women realise. And actually it's often one of the first signs, anxiety and sort of low mood. Is it internal, is it external factors? We're living in a very complicated world. People, of course there are stresses, but there are stresses at 30, there are stresses at 20. Is it a big coincidence that as your hormones are readjusting in your 40s, early 50s, that suddenly these, yes, you're dealing with probably elderly parents, work, but you've got that problem at other times of your life. So I think everything is being minimalised in that report to say it's not your hormones. What we need to be talking about is it can actually be a time to reframe your life and actually if you've been a little bit off track, get back on track, looking after yourself with your diet, your exercise, your movement. There's so much evidence-backed information about women need to be moving more. It's going to help with their physical health, their mental health. So I see it as a gate opening rather than a gate closing, and I think that's the misconception with menopause.
And welcome back. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. A new picture of the Princess of Wales has been released to mark Mother's Day, but tonight, a number of international news agencies have withdrawn it, with one saying it appears to have been manipulated. A ship due to take aid to Gaza from Cyprus has been delayed, and President Biden has warned Israel of a red line over any new assaults on Rafah. And a government minister has said it's necessary to redraw the line between what is legitimate and what is extremism ahead of the release of a new definition of extremism. Hello there, you're watching the press preview, a first look at what is on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half an hour, we'll see what's making headlines with the broadcaster and author, Natasha Devon, and the political journalist and broadcaster, Thea Ushwood. Thanks both. Let's see what's on some of those front pages. And the first official photograph of the Princess of Wales is on the front of the Metro. The headline, "I'm Smiles Better." Same picture on the front of the Mirror with the headline, "Thank You." The Eye reports exclusively that computer problems at the Home Office have been slowing down efforts to tackle the rise in illegal migration. The Guardian says leading counter-terrorism figures and 3 former Home Secretaries have warned senior politicians against using allegations of extremism to score political points. The Times, meanwhile, says a new report is warning of an alarming rise in demonstrations and threats of violence and intimidation towards people accused of insulting Islam. The Financial Times leads with a poll which says President Biden is struggling to win voters' trust on the economy, even though they're actually starting to see it improve. And the Star speaks to a French linguist who tells the paper there is no such thing as the English language. We're all just speaking badly pronounced French. OK. And tonight we're joined by the broadcaster and author Natasha Devon and the political journalist and broadcaster Theo Usherwood. Natasha, Theo, thanks both for being with us. Plenty to talk about tonight, and we're going to start with that picture. First of all, of course, it's a picture, the first time that we've seen Kate since her surgery, and the palace had to put it out because of all the speculation.
Yes, this is a picture which, of course, was issued by Kensington Palace. It was taken by Prince William to mark Mother's Day, and it shows the Princess of Wales surrounded by her 3 children. And, of course, it was meant to deal with all of those online conspiracy theories. It was obviously we'd been expecting to see something of the princess since her abdominal surgery back in January, but in fact there's been radio silence in effect from Kensington Palace. So this was supposed to deal with those conspiracy theories, put them all to bed and say, actually, look, Princess is fine. I know the public's concerns from Kensington Palace. We can all move on here. But it's had the opposite effect because this evening we understand that some of the major news agencies like AP and Reuters have in fact issued what's called a kill notice in the industry,
which is it's a standard procedure.
Yeah, which is when you say actually, and it's worth mentioning briefly. These news agencies, and I've worked for one of them, have very high standards when it comes to pictures that have been issued like this one, rather than one of their photographers taking it themselves. So they've obviously done some research on it, looked at it carefully, and thought that one way or another it's been manipulated or doctored, and therefore they've decided to no longer release it and make it available to their subscribers.
And it's an important distinction, isn't it? Because this did come from Prince William, we were told, and I guess for a few hours today at least, it seems as if it had answered some of those rumours. I mean, the internet was going kind of wild, but I was ignoring it until that notice was issued.
Oh, it's difficult because we don't know in what way it has been manipulated, and until we know, those conspiracy theories will abound. There is a slight hint, I think, of Streisand effect about this, where they've tried to kibosh the story and ended up potentially... There's this feeding frenzy, isn't there, between social media and the tabloids when it comes to the royal family, and I fear that this won't help.
No, it's probably going to continue, and of course the royals are going to be in the spotlight tomorrow because it's a Commonwealth Day as well. I mean, it's worth sort of thinking about some of the conspiracy theories around it. As you say, we don't know yet what may well have happened, but to use the word manipulated, I mean, you've worked on those pictures. Yeah. What could that have been? It's manipulated at source, they say.
Well, there's been some, obviously, Kate isn't wearing her wedding ring. I've seen, just looking at some of these conspiracy theories around the hands and where the hands are meeting, where Kate's hands are meeting the children. It's unclear as to whether exactly what's happening. It'd be wrong to speculate as to exactly what those news agencies fear that Kensington Palace has done. But it isn't going to help. And I think the problem that Kensington Palace has got itself into with this one is they think we're 15 years ago, and that you can somehow just say, we're not going to provide a running commentary on the princess's health. We're going to let her recover in private in Windsor after her abdominal surgery. That's it. Finished. You can't do that anymore because of social media. And they had to get this right and just issue a photograph of the princess looking well. But now we have this, as you say, the speculation during the day online, you don't know what to think of it, perhaps just best ignore it. But now we have those respected news agencies coming out and saying we can no longer have good faith in this photograph. Will just add to the feeding frenzy online and social media.
And it's the thing about the way that social media works as well, because I was on the day when it was announced that she was having the surgery and that she'd be convalescing. And it was quite clear, I said it many times, that she wouldn't be back until after Easter. We haven't had Easter yet, and yet still, in the weeks that have been running up and still now, we've got all this continued speculation about it.
I do wonder how many people on social media are actually engaging in the conspiracy theories. It seems to me that it's just a couple of accounts who have an obsessive interest in the princess, and it's the tabloids that are picking up on those and amplifying them. If they didn't do that, then maybe it would have worked saying she's going to be convalescing and we should all just wait for her to re-emerge.
To be fair, I think actually the princess has the perfect right to
100%.
to get better from what's obviously quite significant surgery in private. I'm not doubting that for a moment, but I just think the palace could have been smarter in the way they handled it, especially over the last few weeks. I don't think you can simply take yourself out of the conversation and with this photograph, given what the news agencies have said, something appears to be awry.
OK, we're going to move on a bit, but I guess what they've had to do, they told us she was going to come back after Easter. They've had to keep sort of dripping photographs of the weeks, and that would have just been strange, because, as you say, she has the right to privately convalesce. All right, more to come on that story, I am sure. Let's move on to some other news. On the front of The Guardian here, extremism. The Communities Minister, Michael Gove, is going to redefine what extremism means. Is that how we should understand this story? Not a change in the law.
He's going to broaden the definition. And I think there's a concern, a significant concern, and it's interesting, The Guardian story, the breadth of concern in terms of the different Home Secretaries that have put their names to this letter. Priti Patel, Sajid Javid, Amber Rudd, former Home Secretaries, I should say, have put their name to this letter. Worried that Michael Gove, the Community Secretary, is simply, by broadening the definition of extremism, is suddenly going to bring in people who are not extremists and who have perfect right to free speech and to voice their concerns about anything, but suddenly, if under Mr Gove's new definition of what extremism is, could find themselves in falling foul of some quite significant legislation. And I think what these Home Secretaries are saying, and that we should also add that Brendan Cox, the widow, of course, the Joe Cox, the MP, and Neil Basu, former head of counter-terrorism policing, Richard Dannett, ex-chief of general staff in the army, have all raising concerns now to say, actually, it's not for the government to score political points here and try and bring in these groups or organisations that have no place as being branded extremists. Let's just actually think very carefully about the definition itself. And, of course, this is going to be, given what we've seen in recent weeks and the Prime Minister's announcement outside number 10 Downing Street, this is going to be a hotly contested topic. And I think there is a concern that by politicising it, or if the government is seen to politicise it, it's only going to increase tensions, community tensions, at what is quite a challenging time.
It would seem to be having that effect. I mean, what did you make of this, Natasha? We've also got the line, I guess, in the Times as well, talking about blasphemy demos growing. What's that reporting about?
I mean, it's difficult to see, really, how the government could have handled this worse in terms of the rising tensions that were inevitably going to occur because people have such strong connections to either Israel or Palestine. And describing the former Home Secretary, describing the peace marches as hate marches, the counter-terrorism SAR claiming that central London is a no-go zone for Jewish people, all of these things are so unnecessarily incendiary. There is another piece in the Times which says that some of the organisers of the ceasefire process have been linked to groups who want to see more consequences for those who engage in blasphemy, particularly in the context of Islam. But again, when you read the detail, it feels like fear-mongering to me. There isn't actually a story here as far as I can make out.
Very interesting, very interesting. Gove has said that, you know, people on those marches need to be mindful of who they're marching against. But if we take a step back from what's going on and talk about the rhetoric and the sort of political positioning that's going on here, it's clear that the government are seemingly trying to be very tough on these marches because they think it's politically expedient.
Yes, they are trying to be tough, or they seem to be tough. And of course, the Metropolitan Police has come under significant criticism. There was an incident at the weekend where they were seen to arrest somebody who was protesting against the marches themselves. And it is challenging, but for the government. But what I think the Home Secretaries and the gist of what they're saying in this statement is that actually it's a time for cool heads. Let's not suddenly make it worse by drawing in lots of different groups and organisations that have perfectly legitimate causes and rights to express concerns about a range of topics. And I think what's also interesting, particularly about this story, is that, and Gove's announcement, is it's focusing on ideology rather than actions. And so, of course, and the argument from those concerned about this definition is that, of course, if you're inciting violence or acting in a violent way, you need to face the full force of the law. But what shouldn't happen is if you're talking in broader terms about ideology, then actually you don't necessarily come under the definition of what it is to be an extremist. And there's a concern that suddenly the government's going to find itself with a definition that is just making the situation worse rather than actually providing clarity of what is, as I said, a difficult time.
Absolutely right. Theo, Natasha, thank you very much for that. Plenty more for you two coming up after the break. We'll also be looking at this story in the Mirror. That's Esther Jai, the mother of Brianna, who says that she's speaking about the mother of the people who killed her daughter, saying that they have lost a child too. We'll talk more about that next.
Trust in politics is at an all-time low. What's going wrong and can we fix it? I'll be hosting a new weekly podcast with two powerhouses of British politics, Labour MP Jess Phillips and Conservative peer Ruth Davidson. We'll work out who's on top and who's having an electoral dysfunction. Available every Friday wherever you get your podcasts.
They've pushed the protesters further back here. There's around 200 or 300 still remaining.
I'm Dan Whitehead and I'm Sky News' West of England correspondent.
This van goes onto the streets of Plymouth 7 days a week, 365 days a year.
These facilities at the moment are a lifesaver. It's all we've got.
From fishing communities to bustling cities, we spend every day reporting from across the region, hearing from people who have real stories.
I'll have nowhere to live for about 3 or 4 months.
There are still people inside the properties here. They are coming from the epicentre of what is now a global health pandemic. We were seeing and speaking to young women who were selling themselves right on the high street. It was desperately sad, and the fact it was happening right in the heart of this community.
Before Brexit, these oysters were being exported to the EU, but the trade stopped overnight.
What's your feeling about the future then?
Blake might all be finished, I don't know.
Hello and welcome back. You're watching the Press Preview. We're joined by the broadcaster and author Natasha Devon and the political journalist and broadcaster Thea Usherwood. Natasha, Thea, thanks for staying with us. Let's go straight to the story in the Daily Mirror. Esther Jai, who is becoming the campaigner that I guess that she feels like she needs to be, having lost her daughter in such tragic circumstances. And just talk us through some of this reporting here.
It's an incredible. She's an incredible woman, and exactly what she's done. She always said after the verdict and sentencing that she would be willing to speak to the families of the two individuals who murdered her daughter, and she's then now that conversation has obviously happened, and she's given an interview to the Mirror in which she's spoken about the impact that Esther's murder has not just had on her own family but on their families as well. And I don't know, we can't look into the future as to how important Esther Jai might be in terms of shaping policy around the internet and use of the internet for children, and the rabbit hole that the two killers went down as they started to get into the dark web with things that children should never see, that they ended up playing out in real life that led to the tragic murder of Brianna. But it is incredible what she's done, and whether I know Keir Starmer met Esther at the time, whether the Labour leader, if he was to become Prime Minister, decides to bring her in and actually ask her to help shape policy, shape legislation to protect children against what is an absolute minefield, not just for the children but for the parents as they're trying to navigate what their children can watch on the internet.
So it's not just the internet that she's focused on as well. There was a story in the Sunday Mirror today where she's talking about going into schools and teaching kids to be kinder and just be nicer to one another and having sort of more mindfulness.
I mean, echoing entirely what Thea has said, what a magnificent woman Esther Jai is, to have the capacity and the kindness to be able to meet up with the parent of the murderer of her daughter and be able to have that conversation. My slight concern, though, is there's already so much pressure on schools to provide more and more with limited funding and limited resources, and really to solve all of the world's problems with a limited amount of time in the day. And certainly, as somebody who goes into schools and speaks to young people about mental health myself, we're trying to provide children and young people with greater and greater amounts of resilience. And I think, at what point do you say, this world, this environment that young people are in, it's too much to be resilient to, and we need to start focusing on changing the environment rather than trying to change the children?
Absolutely, and that is a much longer conversation for another time, unfortunately. Let's move on to this story on the front of the Eye. And this, it's an exclusive story, they say. A faulty IT system is hampering efforts. Can you take us through the reporting of this?
Yes, the Home Office has been besieged with problems when it comes to IT, when it comes to running immigration. It's a nightmare for the Home Office, and the Eye has this exclusive that so far it's the flawed Atlas system has cost the government no less than £71 million in errors and delays. We've seen delays to applications for British citizenship, skilled worker visas, and of course the Homes for Ukraine scheme. This is going to be another problem for the Home Secretary, James Cleverly, to sort out. It's a very difficult department to run, and it always seems to cut. It's always, when we're talking about these things, it's always the Home Office that seems to suffer from these particular glitches, and it's just another slight embarrassing.
I mean, slightly embarrassing is a very polite way of putting it. Yeah, it's a very moderate way of putting it. I mean, it's another issue, isn't it, for the government to face? And Rishi Sunak, just when he thinks he might be able to get ahead of stuff, there are more and more issues. And of course, the government have put immigration and stopping the boats and all of that at the very heart of what they hope to achieve ahead of the election. So this is not going to help.
I think it's important to remind people at this stage that the Rwanda plan is costing £1.8 million for each asylum seeker. And there's been a warning recently that the cost of the Rwanda plan soar to £500 million. So whilst the government is placing all of this funding, resources and attention on Rwanda, they could have been fixing this system so that people who are genuine refugees could start working in their communities, paying taxes, not having to stay in hotels and unsafe barges. If the system worked properly, this problem would go away.
Yeah. And there is a lot to be said about that, right? Natasha, Thea, thank you very much for that. More from you in the next hour. But for now, let's Let's take a look at the weather forecast.
Warm memories wherever you go. The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
It's going to be largely overcast and damp, although it's going to be drier than it was yesterday. Tuesday is going to bring outbreaks of rain in from the west. It's going to be murky to start with fog on the hills and some outbreaks of rain, mainly in the north and the east, but it will be frost-free. The morning looks like it's going to stay grey and damp for most, although the southwest will have sunny spells and a scattering of showers, while the northwest of Scotland will see more general rain. Temperatures will be like today's, but it will be less breezy in the north. Wales, the east of Ireland and the west of Northern Ireland will brighten up later with a few showers moving in, while rain will take over more of northern Scotland. The southwest of Ireland can expect rain later on as well. Tuesday brings rain to most parts, but it's not going to amount to much over northern Scotland, while eastern England looks like it could be mainly dry.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.
Well, coming up on Sky News at 11, the controversy over a new picture of the Princess of Wales, with international news agencies withdrawing the photo. One says it appears to have been manipulated.